7-foot Apache woman said no man could handle her until a calm cowboy did. Wild West story. Towns were small, made of dusty streets, wooden shops, and the occasional saloon where cowboys and travelers gathered to share news. Yet, even in a place where rumors and tall tales were part of everyday life, there was one story that captured everyone's imagination more than any other. It was the story of a woman unlike anyone they had ever seen, a woman so extraordinary that people still whispered about her even years later. She was tall, extraordinarily tall, 7 feet from the tip of her boots to the top of her head, and she was strong, proud, and fearless. She was an Apache woman, a warrior at heart, who moved through the world with a presence that could not be ignored. People in the nearby towns had given her many names. Some called her the giantess of the plains, while others simply spoke her name in awe, shaking their heads as if they could not believe she truly existed. They said she could ride a horse faster than any man they had seen, lift things that seemed impossible for anyone, and face danger with a courage that left everyone breathless. But more than her physical strength, it was her spirit that fascinated people. She was independent in a way that most had never seen. She walked through life on her own terms, answering only to herself and the principles she held dear. She did not bend to the will of others, and she certainly did not seek the approval of men who thought their size or bravado could impress her. Life for her had never been easy, though she made it look effortless. Being 7 feet tall was rare enough, but in a time when women were often expected to stay small, quiet, and obedient, her height was both a gift and a challenge. Children stared at her, mouths wide in wonder, and adults sometimes looked at her with fear or jealousy. People often misjudged her, thinking she was only strong in body, but she was also incredibly intelligent, quick-witted, and capable of understanding things that many overlooked. Her words carried weight, her actions carried purpose, and anyone who crossed her without respect quickly learned that appearances could be deceiving. Despite her independence, she had always felt a certain loneliness. Many men had tried to win her attention, hoping to impress her with flashy displays of strength or wealth. They would brag about their skills as hunters or gunslingers, boast about the number of cattle they owned, or exaggerate tales of bravery. But she was not impressed. She was not swayed by empty words or shallow acts. Time and time again, men approached her thinking they could match her, only to stumble over their own arrogance or nervousness. The Apache woman had grown accustomed to disappointment, learning that true connection could not be forced or bought. Her expectations were simple yet firm: respect, honesty, and courage, not the kind that showed in muscles alone, but the kind that came from character. In the evenings, when the sun dipped below the horizon and the sky turned shades of orange and pink, she often wandered the plains. She would walk along the dry riverbeds, listen to the whispers of the wind through the grass, and watch the birds circle the sky. These moments were hers alone, free from the judgments and whispers of the town. She loved the solitude, but even then she could feel the eyes of others upon her. Travelers passing through, cowboys returning from distant ranches, and even the town's children would sneak glances, curious but hesitant. Some left offerings of small gifts, like woven blankets or handmade trinkets, hoping to earn a smile from the giant woman who seemed so untouchable. Others told stories that grew taller with each telling, transforming her into a figure almost mythic, a warrior who could fight off a dozen men, or a giantess who could chase a runaway horse across the plains without breaking a sweat. The townsfolk were a mix of admiration and fear. Some respected her greatly, knowing that she could be a loyal ally in times of trouble, a protector of those in need, and a wise counselor when guidance was sought. Others were wary, unsure how to approach someone so different from themselves. They had never encountered a woman who combined strength, intelligence, and independence in such a perfect, intimidating balance. To them, she was a living legend, almost like the tales of heroes from far-off lands. Yet, for all the whispers and admiration, she remained grounded, living her life with dignity and purpose. She knew her own worth, and she refused to let anyone diminish it. Her daily routine was simple but demanding. She would help her people with chores, hunt and gather food when necessary, and ride her horse across the plains to check on her family or ensure the safety of her land. She never hesitated to step in if someone was in danger, whether it was a stray animal threatening a child or a violent storm approaching the town. People began to notice that her strength was not only physical, her heart and mind were equally formidable. When conflicts arose, she approached them calmly, listening first, then acting decisively. She became a symbol of courage and wisdom, someone whose presence reminded everyone that true strength was more than muscle and height. It was character, patience, and determination. But life was not without its challenges. Being different in a world that valued conformity was never easy. Some men resented her because they could not intimidate her. Some women envied her freedom and independence. And there were those who simply did not understand her and tried to diminish her, calling her harsh names or spreading cruel rumors. Yet, she faced all of it with resilience. She did not retaliate with anger but with quiet confidence, proving over and over that her spirit could not be broken. People began to learn an important lesson. It was not worth trying to control or belittle her, because she had already mastered control over her own life. Despite her strength, she had a softer side known only to a few. She appreciated quiet moments, small gestures of kindness, and the rare companionship of someone who could match her spirit. But such moments were rare because very few could meet her on her level. Those who tried often faltered, overwhelmed by her presence or intimidated by her independence. The Apache woman had learned to trust her instincts. She did not need constant approval or affection, but she longed for someone who could see her fully, for who she truly was, and not just for the myths or legends that surrounded her. As time passed, her reputation only grew. Travelers told stories of seeing a towering woman riding across the plains with unmatched skill, helping townsfolk in ways no one else could. Children spoke in awe of her bravery, and adults marveled at her intellect and courage. Yet no matter how many people admired or feared her, she remained unchanged in her ways. She was herself first and foremost, and that authenticity made her even more remarkable. The Apache woman became a symbol of strength, independence, and the rare kind of courage that came from knowing who you are and refusing to compromise that identity. And so, life in the Wild West continued around her, with her at the center of stories that would be told for generations. People wondered if anyone would ever truly match her spirit, someone who could stand beside her not in fear or arrogance, but in understanding and calm respect. She had faced the world on her own, proven her strength, and maintained her dignity. Yet in the quiet moments beneath the vast sky, she sometimes wondered if there was someone out there who could meet her as an equal, a person who could understand her without trying to change her. Until that day, she continued to walk the plains with her head held high, a giant among the ordinary, a legend in the making, and a woman whose life was a story worth telling. Life had a rhythm in the dusty plains, but for the Apache woman, it often felt like a rhythm she had to dance alone. The townsfolk admired her from afar, respected her courage, and whispered tales of her strength, but very few truly understood her. Men came and went, each trying to impress her in their own way. Some rode into town with guns on their hips, claiming bravery through empty threats or daring stunts. Others tried to flaunt wealth they barely possessed or told tall tales of heroic deeds. She had seen it all. She had heard all the promises. And every time she had watched them stumble, fall short, or leave when their initial excitement faded. By now, she had grown wary. It was not that she disliked men or feared them. She simply knew that most could not meet her level. Her height, her strength, and her mind made her an extraordinary woman, but she also carried the wisdom that came with years of independence. She had learned to spot superficiality, arrogance, or weakness masked as confidence. And she had learned to protect her heart, refusing to let it be toyed with. Life, for her, had become a careful balance of solitude and public presence. She moved among people, helping where she could, earning respect, but never allowing herself to be softened by flattery or false gestures of affection. Then, one hot summer morning, the calm cowboy arrived. He was nothing like the others. He rode into town quietly, without fanfare, without boasting, and without trying to make himself larger than life. He wore simple clothes, a worn hat and boots that had clearly traveled many miles. He did not try to impress anyone. He greeted people politely, helped where needed, and moved with an ease that was steady rather than flashy. To the Apache woman, he might have seemed ordinary at first glance. Yet there was something different about him, a quiet confidence, a sense of calm in his eyes, and a respect for the world around him that she had not seen in anyone before. It began with small things. She noticed him helping an elderly woman carry a heavy basket without hesitation, speaking softly to her and making her laugh. He tied a horse that had wandered loose with patience, never raising his voice even when the animal resisted. In town, he never boasted of his skill or strength. Instead, he worked diligently, quietly, and efficiently, earning the admiration of townsfolk without even trying. The Apache woman watched him from a distance, intrigued by his demeanor. He seemed completely unaware of her reputation, her height, or the stories whispered about her. That in itself was unusual. No one had ever treated her as a normal person before. Curiosity drew her closer. She approached him one afternoon when he was repairing a fence at the edge of town. She asked him questions, not about himself, but about the land, the animals, and the work he was doing. He answered honestly, thoughtfully, and with patience. He did not try to impress her. He did not try to dominate the conversation. He listened carefully, as if every word she spoke mattered. That simple act of listening intrigued her. It was something so rare that it felt almost like a revelation. Here was a man who did not see her height as a challenge or her strength as a threat. He treated her as an equal, not as an obstacle, a curiosity, or a spectacle. Over the following weeks, they spent more time together. Sometimes it was by chance, a shared path across the plains, a need to repair a fence, or tending to animals that had wandered too far. Other times it was intentional, as if both understood that they were drawn together by something unspoken. She began testing him, subtly at first. She would lift heavy logs nearby to see if he reacted with surprise or condescension. She would speak sharply, jokingly challenging him, expecting him to falter or respond with empty pride. But he never did. He remained calm, patient, and respectful, often smiling without condescension, sometimes helping when asked, and sometimes simply standing quietly, giving her space. This patience was something she had never encountered before. Most men either tried to match her strength in a show of bravado or felt intimidated and left. This cowboy, however, neither competed nor fled. He adapted to her pace, respected her boundaries, and met her on a level that felt both safe and challenging. She began to realize that strength was not always measured by physical ability or loud words. Sometimes, true strength was quiet, steady, and unwavering. She had spent years valuing courage, and now she saw it reflected in him, not through fights or flashiness, but through calm presence and reliability. Their bond deepened naturally. He learned her habits and respected them. He understood that she valued her independence and never tried to control her. At the same time, she noticed that his calmness had a soothing effect on her. Her fiery temper, her impatience with shallow suitors, and her defensive walls began to soften around him. She could laugh freely, share stories from her past, and even speak about fears she rarely admitted to anyone. He never judged, never pressured, and never sought to change her. For the first time, she felt seen, not as a legend, not as a giant, not as a challenge, but as a person. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the plains in shades of gold and red, they sat together on a hill overlooking the town. She spoke of her childhood, her tribe, and the challenges she had faced. He listened quietly, occasionally asking gentle questions that showed he cared and understood. She realized that he did not feel the need to fill silence with words or prove anything. His presence was enough. For the first time, she understood that connection did not have to be loud or dramatic. It could be calm, steady, and deeply meaningful. She felt a trust she had never allowed before, a sense of safety that made her heart lighter than it had been in years. Yet, even with this growing closeness, she remained cautious. Years of disappointment had taught her that trust was precious and not to be given lightly. She tested him with small challenges, letting him handle difficult tasks, observing how he responded to her sharp remarks, seeing if he maintained composure when others questioned his abilities. Each time, he passed with patience and respect. He did not seek to dominate or compete, and he did not retreat in fear. His consistency impressed her more than any grand gesture ever could. Slowly, the walls she had built around her heart began to crumble. Through these interactions, she also began to see herself differently. She realized that her independence and strength were not barriers to connection. They were qualities that could be appreciated and respected by someone worthy. The calm cowboy reflected her own values back to her in a way she had never experienced before. He mirrored patience, integrity, and quiet courage, showing her that it was possible for two strong, independent people to meet and complement each other rather than clash. She began to imagine a life where partnership was possible, where she did not have to compromise her strength, and where someone could truly walk beside her as an equal. By the end of this period, the Apache woman knew something extraordinary had begun. She had encountered a man unlike any other, one who did not seek to impress her through displays of strength or exaggerated stories, one who did not fear her presence, her height, or her reputation. He met her calmly, respectfully, and with patience, and in doing so, he had found a way into her heart without breaking her spirit or demanding it. For the first time, she felt the possibility of a partnership built not on fear, admiration, or superficial traits, but on genuine understanding and mutual respect. It was not love in the dramatic, sudden sense that townsfolk expected. It was subtler, deeper, and far more powerful. It was the kind of bond that grew slowly, forged in shared moments, quiet conversations, and acts of care that did not seek recognition. She had spent so long feeling untouchable, untamable, and misunderstood. Now, she began to realize that the right person could not only match her strength, but also complement it, bringing calm to her fire without diminishing her spirit. She felt a sense of hope she had rarely allowed herself to feel, a hope that life, even in the harshness of the Wild West, could bring someone truly worthy to her side. And so, life on the plains continued, but for the Apache woman, it had changed in subtle yet profound ways. She still walked tall, fought fiercely when necessary, and maintained her independence. But now, there was a sense of anticipation, a quiet excitement, and the warmth of connection that she had never thought possible. The calm cowboy had not conquered her with force or display. He had simply shown her that true strength and understanding could create a bond stronger than anything else. And in that realization, she began to see a future she had only dared to dream of, a future where her heart, spirit, and courage could coexist with someone who truly understood her. Life on the plains had begun to change for the Apache woman in ways she had never expected. The quiet, calm cowboy had become a constant presence in her life, not in a way that demanded attention, but in a way that slowly shifted the rhythm of her days. He was there when needed, stepping in without fanfare, yet never imposing himself. He listened when she spoke, offered help when asked, and understood the balance between companionship and independence. In his presence, she began to notice subtle shifts in herself, changes she had not anticipated after years of moving through life with her guard firmly in place. She had spent so long being untouchable, untamable, and independent that it was almost uncomfortable to allow herself to feel connected to someone else. Yet the cowboy had a way of moving beside her without challenging her authority, without trying to dominate, and without expecting anything in return. This was different from anyone she had met before. Past suitors had tried to impress her with bold words, flashy displays of strength, or exaggerated claims, all of which had failed. This man did not compete. He did not boast. He simply existed with integrity, calmness, and a quiet confidence that made her feel seen for the first time. Over time, the Apache woman began to let down some of the walls she had built around her heart. She tested him, not in anger or malice, but with small challenges to see if he could truly understand and respect her. She would take on tasks that others thought impossible for a woman, tasks that many men would hesitate to attempt, and watched how he responded. He never faltered. He never showed fear or irritation. Sometimes he helped. Sometimes he simply observed, offering a steady presence. Each time he proved that he did not need to match her physically or verbally to earn her respect. His calmness, patience, and steady nature spoke volumes. One afternoon, as the sun blazed high in the sky and the wind carried the scents of dry grass and wildflowers across the plains, she decided to take him on a more daring test. She led him to a steep, rocky trail that wound up a hillside overlooking the town. The climb was difficult, requiring balance, strength, and careful attention to the loose stones underfoot. She expected him to struggle, to complain, or perhaps even turn back. Instead, he climbed steadily, matching her pace, carefully choosing his steps, and occasionally offering a hand when she needed support. There was no need for words or dramatics. The trust between them was evident in every movement. By the time they reached the top, she felt a deep sense of respect and a quiet admiration that was growing into something more profound. At the summit, the town lay stretched out below them, a patchwork of dusty streets, wooden buildings, and wagons moving slowly along the main road. The wind ruffled her hair, and she felt a rare sense of peace. She spoke of her childhood, the stories her parents had told her, and the lessons she had learned from her tribe. She spoke of struggles, triumphs, and moments of solitude that had shaped her into the woman she had become. He listened attentively, asking questions that showed he truly cared, but never pried or judged. His presence allowed her to be honest and vulnerable in a way she had never allowed herself before. As the days turned into weeks, their bond continued to strengthen. The Apache woman began to see the world differently through his eyes. She noticed how he handled challenges calmly, how he treated others with respect and fairness, and how he never sought recognition for his efforts. He showed her that strength was not always loud, and that courage could be gentle yet unwavering. She began to realize that her own strength did not have to be a barrier to connection. It could be complemented, even enhanced, by someone who understood and valued it. Their partnership extended beyond quiet companionship. Together, they faced the challenges of the plains, from unpredictable weather to wandering livestock, from repairing fences to helping townsfolk in need. She saw firsthand how he handled difficulties with a balance of patience, skill, and calm determination. He did not seek to overshadow her or take control. He simply worked beside her, respecting her decisions while contributing in ways that supported their shared goals. Through this shared labor, she felt a growing sense of trust and reliance, not in a way that made her dependent, but in a way that made her realize the power of partnership when grounded in respect. At night, around the crackling fire, their conversations grew more personal. They spoke of dreams, fears, and the paths that had led them to this point. She shared stories of the challenges she had faced as a tall, independent woman in a world that often misunderstood her. He shared tales of his travels, of people he had met, and of the lessons he had learned through quiet observation and thoughtful action. In these moments, laughter would echo under the stars, soft and genuine, bridging the gap between two very different lives. She began to understand that love, or a deep connection, did not have to be dramatic or forceful. It could grow quietly, nurtured by shared experiences, understanding, and mutual respect. The Apache woman also began to reflect on herself. She saw that her past fears, of being misunderstood, of being alone, of never finding someone worthy, were slowly fading. This cowboy had proven that it was possible to find someone who could walk beside her without fear, who could respect her strength, and who could match her in spirit rather than in force. She felt a new kind of freedom, not just in solitude but in shared life. For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine a future where she could remain herself fully, strong and independent, while also being connected to someone she trusted completely. Yet, she remained cautious. Years of disappointment had taught her that trust was not to be given lightly. She knew the importance of observing actions rather than being swayed by words. The calm cowboy's consistency, patience, and integrity continued to prove his worth, day by day. She tested him not maliciously, but to ensure that this bond was real and enduring. And each time, he met her expectations with grace, never faltering, never seeking to dominate, and never asking her to compromise her independence. In doing so, he showed her a love and respect that was rare in her world, a love that allowed her to remain herself while still feeling understood and valued. One memorable day, a sudden storm swept across the plains. Dark clouds gathered quickly, and fierce winds threatened to topple tents and scatter livestock. The townsfolk panicked, rushing to secure property and animals. The Apache woman and the cowboy sprang into action together. She guided a group of horses into a safe corral, while he assisted with the smaller animals and helped reinforce the fences. Amid the chaos, he remained calm, steady, and reliable, never losing focus or patience. She realized in that moment that this was the kind of strength she had been searching for, not loud or boastful, but unwavering, dependable, and true. She admired him not only for what he did, but for who he was. By the time the storm passed, the Apache woman felt a shift within herself. She had long believed that no man could truly handle her, not in the way that mattered. Most either faltered, tried to dominate, or gave up. But this cowboy had not only handled her presence, her strength, and her independence. He had embraced it, matched it with calmness and respect, and walked beside her as an equal. In that realization, her heart softened, and she allowed herself to acknowledge the growing bond between them. It was not just admiration or friendship. It was something deeper, something that could withstand the tests of life on the wild West Plains. The Apache woman began to see their partnership as a new kind of adventure. She had faced countless challenges alone, but now she had someone beside her who complemented her skills, respected her decisions, and matched her spirit. Together, they could navigate the harshness of the plains, protect those they cared about, and create a life built on mutual respect and understanding. She felt excitement, hope, and a sense of purpose that extended beyond her own achievements. For the first time, she allowed herself to envision a life where strength and connection coexisted, where independence did not mean isolation, and where trust was given freely, not lightly. By the end of this chapter of her life, the Apache woman had grown in ways she had not anticipated. She had learned that true connection did not require compromise or loss of self. She had discovered that someone could meet her fully, without fear or pretense, and still walk beside her with patience, understanding, and respect. Her walls had not disappeared entirely. They were part of who she was, but they had shifted, softened, and allowed the possibility of love and partnership to enter her life. She had found someone who could not only handle her but truly understand her, and in that discovery, she experienced a freedom and joy that she had never thought possible. And so, life continued on the plains, with the Apache woman and the calm cowboy moving forward together. Their bond was steady, built on shared experiences, trust, and deep respect. She had finally found someone who could meet her as an equal, who could walk beside her through challenges, and who could bring calm to her fire without diminishing her spirit. This was a turning point in her story, a moment when strength and understanding converged, and the possibility of a life filled with connection, partnership, and shared adventure became real for the first time. Life on the plains had never been quiet for long, but for the Apache woman, the days now carried a new rhythm. The quiet, calm cowboy had become not only her companion but her equal, a partner she could rely on in ways she had never imagined. Together, they navigated the unpredictable life of the Wild West. The sudden storms, the wandering livestock, the disputes among townsfolk, and the constant challenges of living in such a harsh, open land. Yet through it all, their bond only grew stronger, rooted in mutual respect, understanding, and shared effort. People in town began to notice the change. The Apache woman, once solitary and untouchable, now moved with someone at her side who complemented her strength rather than challenged it. They worked together seamlessly, repairing fences, guiding horses, helping townsfolk in need, and managing daily tasks with efficiency and care. She had always been admired for her courage and skill, but now the townspeople saw a new dimension, a partnership built not on fear or dominance, but on trust and respect. Rumors spread that the giantess of the plains had finally found someone who could truly stand beside her, and those who had once doubted her independence began to understand that strength could coexist with connection. The Apache woman had grown used to being admired from afar, but she realized that admiration alone had never satisfied her. It was the quiet support, the shared effort, and the calm presence of the cowboy that brought her fulfillment. She began to see the value of partnership, not as a compromise but as an extension of her own strength. Together, they became a team that was admired, respected, and sometimes even envied. Yet they did not seek attention or accolades. Their bond was private, built on shared experiences, understanding, and a deep, unspoken trust. As the months passed, they faced challenges that tested both their skills and their bond. One particularly harsh winter brought heavy snow, freezing temperatures, and treacherous conditions on the plains. The townsfolk struggled to keep livestock safe and homes secure. Many men and women worked tirelessly, but the Apache woman and the cowboy coordinated efforts with a calm and steady efficiency that inspired everyone. She guided the townsfolk in moving animals to safer areas, repairing damaged roofs, and ensuring that no one went hungry during the cold nights. The cowboy assisted in ways that complemented her leadership, reinforcing structures, organizing resources, and offering help where it was most needed. Together, they faced the harshness of winter not as individuals but as partners, and their teamwork saved lives and livelihoods. It was during moments like these that she realized how much she had changed. She had always been independent, capable, and strong, but she had not fully understood the power of shared effort, of someone who respected her abilities while contributing equally to the challenges they faced. The cowboy never overshadowed her, never sought to control, and never demanded recognition. Instead, he worked beside her, earning respect through action, patience, and unwavering reliability. In his presence, she felt not only trust but also freedom, the freedom to be herself fully while knowing she had someone who would stand with her through any trial. Even in their daily lives, there was a quiet beauty to their partnership. They shared simple routines that brought a sense of stability and contentment. Early mornings were spent tending to the horses, repairing fences, and checking on the small farms scattered across the plains. Afternoons sometimes brought visits to the town, where they helped with chores, resolved disputes, or simply shared a quiet meal together. Evenings were often spent by the fire, talking, laughing, and reflecting on the day. She noticed that she could be herself entirely with him, strong, independent, fierce when necessary, and gentle when she allowed herself to be. He, in turn, shared his own thoughts, dreams, and experiences without judgment, showing her that connection did not require the sacrifice of individuality. Children in the town began to look up to them as a team. They watched the Apache woman and the cowboy handle challenges calmly, efficiently, and with care, learning lessons about courage, respect, and partnership. She took joy in teaching them skills she had learned from her tribe, how to ride, track animals, and understand the land, while he demonstrated patience, calm reasoning, and problem-solving. Together, they became role models not only for strength, but also for cooperation, respect, and the quiet power of shared effort. Over time, the Apache woman realized that she had finally found something she had long thought impossible, a partner who could match her spirit, respect her independence, and bring calm to her fire without diminishing her strength. She reflected on the years of solitude, of failed suitors, and of being misunderstood. Each failed attempt had prepared her for this moment, teaching her what truly mattered and what kind of person could walk beside her in life. The cowboy was not the loudest, strongest, or most boastful man she had met, but he was the one who understood her completely and stood with her without question. Their relationship became a legend in the region, stories of the 7-foot Apache woman and the calm cowboy spreading across the plains. Travelers spoke of seeing them ride together through storms, work side by side in town, and face challenges with a quiet, unshakable strength. Some tried to compare themselves, claiming they could handle her, but none matched the patience, understanding, and steadiness of the cowboy who had earned her trust. People admired not only her incredible abilities, but also the bond she had formed with someone who respected her fully. It was a partnership that defied expectations, showing that true strength could coexist with connection, and that independence did not mean isolation. Despite their growing fame, the Apache woman and the cowboy remained grounded. They did not seek recognition or praise. Their bond was built on shared effort, trust, and respect. They continued to work together, facing each challenge with the same calm determination and quiet courage that had brought them together. She knew that many had admired her in the past, but this was different. This was genuine understanding, respect, and love. The cowboy had not tried to conquer her or change her. He had simply been steady, patient, and true, allowing their connection to grow naturally and deeply. As the seasons passed, their life together became a balance of adventure, responsibility, and companionship. They traveled across the plains, helping those in need, protecting their land, and building a home that reflected both their strengths. She taught him the ways of her tribe, sharing knowledge of tracking, survival, and respect for the land, while he shared his own wisdom, skills, and calm perspective on life. Together they faced dangers from wild animals to harsh weather and challenges, but they always faced them side by side, each relying on the other's strengths while complementing their own. In the quiet moments, they reflected on how far they had come. She remembered the days when she had thought no man could handle her, when she had tested each suitor and seen them falter. She realized that her expectations had never been unreasonable. She had only been waiting for someone truly worthy, and now she had found him. He was the calm in her storm, the partner who met her as an equal, and the companion who allowed her to remain herself while building a life together. She felt a joy and fulfillment she had never known, a sense of completion that came not from taming or controlling, but from genuine understanding, respect, and shared life. As their story continued, it became a source of inspiration for many. People saw that strength and independence were not barriers to connection, and that true partnership could be built on patience, respect, and shared effort. The Apache woman had proven that she could face the world alone, but she also showed that allowing someone worthy into her life did not diminish her power, it enhanced it. Their legend spread not because of violence or conquest, but because of courage, integrity, and the quiet strength of love built on equality. The Apache woman and the calm cowboy continued their life together with mutual respect and understanding. They faced new challenges as they arose, navigated the rugged plains, and supported the people around them. Yet, above all, they had each other, a bond built not on fear, vanity, or necessity, but on trust, patience, and the recognition of true worth. She had found someone who could handle her not by overpowering her, but by standing calmly beside her, offering support, understanding, and unwavering companionship. In the end, the story of the 7-foot Apache woman and the calm cowboy became more than a tale of physical strength or bravery. It was a story of patience, trust, and the power of genuine connection. It was a story of a woman who had faced the world on her own, learned to value herself, and finally found a partner who could walk beside her without diminishing her spirit. It was a story that reminded people that true strength was not only about being unbreakable alone, but about finding someone who could complement that strength and share life as an equal. And so, life on the plains continued, with the Apache woman and the cowboy moving forward together, side by side. They faced storms, challenges, and adventures with courage and calmness. They built a life grounded in respect, trust, and shared experience. She had finally found someone who could truly handle her, and not by force, but by understanding, patience, and steady companionship. The legend of the untamable giantess and the calm cowboy would be told for generations, a tale of strength, love, and the extraordinary power of partnership in the Wild West.